It started with a whisper. Not outside, not in the fields, not in the quiet town. It came from the barn. Hollow and deliberate, the sound drifted across the property like smoke curling in the cold night air. I froze in my tracks. The voice said my name, soft but unmistakable, exactly the way I would speak it myself, as if I were calling from somewhere I could not reach. I did not answer, but my mind raced with questions I didn't dare voice. I had arrived in Pine Ridge, a small rural town in Montana, to work temporarily at an old farm on the outskirts. The property was large, spread across miles of rolling fields, bordered by forest, with a barn that had clearly seen generations of use. The locals rarely spoke about the farm, and when they did, it was in whispers, their eyes darting to the horizon as if they feared someone or something might be listening. The caretaker, a thin, wiry man named Amos, greeted me briefly when I arrived. His skin was weathered from decades in the sun, and his eyes carried a strange, distant focus, as if he were simultaneously here and elsewhere. "Don't answer if you hear it," he said, handing me the keys. His voice was flat, almost dismissive, but there was an edge that suggested a warning deeper than the words themselves. "Your name. Don't answer." I laughed lightly, trying to dismiss it as a joke. I had worked on farms before. I had heard stories, ghosts, hallucinations, and the overactive imaginations of small-town folk. But the second night on the property, I understood there was nothing ordinary here. The animals moved strangely. The chickens gathered in tight circles, their heads cocked unnaturally toward the barn. The dogs, usually playful and obedient, stayed motionless at the edges of the yard, ears flat, eyes wide as if expecting something. The horses didn't graze, they simply stood, perfectly still, listening. And then I heard it again. My name, carried from the barn in a hollow, deliberate tone, one syllable at a time. I didn't respond. I couldn't respond. The words reverberated inside my skull, bypassing my ears entirely. It wasn't a voice I could hear. It was a presence I could feel, a deliberate force pressing against my mind with every utterance. I shivered and stepped back, suddenly aware of how utterly alone I was, despite the animals all around me. The barn itself seemed to breathe. The wood groaned, the doors shifted, but no wind moved. Inside, shapes flickered at the corners of my vision, tall, humanoid silhouettes that didn't belong to any animal I had ever seen. Their movements were fluid, deliberate, almost theatrical, yet impossible. The barn was alive, and it knew my name. The next day, I confronted Amos. "What do you mean, don't answer?" I asked. His eyes flickered with a mixture of sadness and resignation. "If it calls your name," he said quietly, "it's not asking, it's deciding. The barn listens, it learns, and it marks. Answer, and you don't come back." I wanted to dismiss him again, but the unease gnawed at my chest. Every corner of the farm seemed to shift when I wasn't looking at it directly. Every shadow was a possible witness. Every animal, no matter how calm, seemed to be observing not just my movements, but my intentions. That night, I stayed in the farmhouse, doors locked, windows shut. I tried to ignore the sound, tried to focus on mundane things, tidying a room, checking my phone, but my mind kept returning to the barn. I could feel it, a presence waiting, aware, patient. And then I heard it again. My name, drawn out, soft, deliberate. I froze. My skin prickled. The hairs on the back of my neck stood tall. My body screamed to run, yet my feet were rooted to the floor. The whisper repeated, slower now, almost caressing the syllables of my name. My throat went dry. I didn't move. I didn't breathe too deeply. I knew that a single sound from me could seal a fate I couldn't escape. By dawn, I was exhausted, hollowed out by fear I didn't fully understand. The barn doors were open, yet no one had entered or left. The animals were in place, watching, waiting, silent. Their eyes followed me even as I moved within the house. I realized then that the farm had no boundaries. It didn't care about fences, gates, or locks. It had a rhythm, a set of rules.
No human could comprehend, enforced by the eyes, ears, and presence of every living creature on the property. As the days passed, the calls became more frequent. Every night, my name drifted from the barn, sometimes from multiple directions, sometimes overlapping, until I felt as though the world itself was speaking to me. I stayed in the farmhouse, terrified to step outside, yet understanding that staying inside offered no safety. The barn, the animals, the land, they were all part of a single consciousness, and I was intruding on it. One evening, I noticed the shadows moving differently. The animals no longer merely observed. They adjusted, coordinated, forming subtle patterns I couldn't consciously see but could sense. Their attention was now fully on me. The whispering grew in intensity, calling my name with a patience that suggested it had always known I would come. The barn was not just a structure, it was a living entity, feeding, calculating, waiting. I understood then that the rules were not about safety, they were about survival, about obedience, about submission. One misstep, one sound, one glance in the wrong direction, and the barn would decide. It had been keeping records long before my arrival, and it would continue long after I was gone, if I were ever gone at all. I stayed awake all night, listening to the low hum of the animals, the creaking of the barn, and the soft, deliberate whisper of my name, repeating over and over. My mind began to fracture, realizing the sheer intelligence behind what I was facing. This was not a simple haunting, not a trick of the mind. This was a system, deliberate and timeless, and I had walked straight into it. By the time the first light of dawn touched the fields, I understood one thing clearly. Rule 1 had been broken simply by stepping onto the property. Rule 2 had been tested the moment I heard my name. Rule 3, if it existed here, would only reveal itself when it was too late. And through it all, I knew with certainty that the barn, the animals, the farm were waiting for the moment I made a single mistake.
Night fell like a heavy curtain over Pine Ridge, and the silence of the farm became suffocating. The air was still, almost too still, and every shadow seemed to stretch longer than it should, moving subtly in ways my mind could not process. I stayed inside the farmhouse at first, staring out the window at the barn, trying to convince myself that the whispers of my name were tricks of the imagination. But deep down, I knew they were real. By midnight, the farm had changed. The animals were no longer in their usual positions. The dogs sat motionless at the edges of the field, ears flat, eyes wide and alert. The chickens had formed tight, circular clusters near the barn doors, and the goats balanced on rooftops and fences, their eyes unblinking, fixed on me as if measuring my intent. Even the cows, normally docile, had stopped grazing. Their heads were lifted, eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight, following every movement I made. I tried to ignore them. I stayed in the house, listening to the slow, deliberate rhythm of the night. But then it began again, my name, whispered, elongated, carried through the air as if the barn itself were speaking directly into my mind. I did not answer. I could not answer. My body refused. The instant I even considered speaking, the weight of the farm pressed down on me like iron chains.
Compelled by a mix of fear and curiosity, I stepped outside. Every step I took was measured, deliberate, as if the farm anticipated me. The barn doors loomed ahead, creaking faintly with an unnatural motion, moving as though they were alive. The shadows inside flickered, revealing shapes that were both human and animal, but neither completely. My pulse quickened. The animals outside the barn shifted subtly, coordinating, forming invisible patterns I could feel but not see. They were the sentinels, the eyes of the farm, enforcing a system I had stumbled into unknowingly. At 2:17 a.m., something changed. The world seemed to pause. Every bird froze mid-flight. The wind stopped. The leaves on the trees no longer moved. Every living creature on the property ceased motion, holding a collective breath as though the farm itself were observing me directly. The silence became unbearable, pressing against my ears, against my skull, against my chest. I could feel my heart pounding, each beat loud enough to echo across the empty fields. Then the whisper came again, my name, from inside the barn this time, clear, deliberate, impossible. The voice was soft, hollow, and omnipresent, echoing inside my mind. I could not locate it with my ears. It was everywhere and nowhere. I knew instinctively that it was testing me, measuring me, judging me. A single misstep could seal my fate. I moved toward the barn, compelled by fear, but also by an unbearable curiosity. The air grew thick with the metallic tang of something alive, something ancient. Shapes shifted in the shadows, circling, twisting, moving with a fluidity that defied logic. The animals flanked me, silent, patient, waiting. Their eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, reflecting an intelligence I could not comprehend. Inside the barn, the temperature dropped. My breath formed clouds in the cold air. The shadows were alive now, moving toward me with purpose. The floor creaked beneath my feet, though no one else was present. And then I understood. This was not a simple haunting. This was a system, a consciousness older than the town itself, and I was intruding. I tried to step back, but my legs refused. The cow, larger than the rest, blocked the only path to safety. Her eyes glowed faintly, piercing into me, and I realized she had been waiting all along. Not for me to flee, not for me to fight, but for me to make a mistake. The other animals closed in slowly, forming a corridor of silent watchers, their gaze a living barrier I could not pass. The whisper grew louder, overlapping, multiplying, until it was impossible to tell where it came from. My name echoed from all directions, bouncing off the walls of the barn, through the trees, across the fields. I felt my mind unraveling, each syllable gnawing at my sanity, testing my resolve. And then I heard it, a low, guttural growl beneath the whisper, coming from deep inside the barn. It was deliberate, intentional, and wholly unearthly. I realized that the sound was not an animal. It was not human. It was something else entirely, something ancient, something patient, and something hungry. Every animal, every shadow, every breath of wind was synchronized with it. The farm itself was alive, conscious, calculating, and I, through curiosity, through folly, through trespass, was now part of its system. I stumbled backward, trying to break the invisible pattern, to escape, but the barn and its occupants were everywhere. Shapes flickered at the edges of my vision, impossible forms that seemed to combine human and animal characteristics in ways that should not exist. My chest tightened, my lungs burned, and my mind screamed, but the voice continued, echoing inside me, my name, again and again, deliberate, inescapable, marking me. Then the barn door slammed shut behind me. The sound reverberated through the property, vibrating through my bones. I turned, but there was nothing, only the cow staring at me, unwavering. The other animals were perfectly still. I understood then that I was trapped, not by fences, not by locks, not by gates. I was trapped by awareness, by observation, by the intelligence that had chosen to watch me, to catalog me, to claim me. I could feel the ledger of the farm extending before me, names stretching back decades, etched in invisible ink that only the barn could read. My name, written faintly at first, began to darken, slowly, spreading through the page as if the farm itself were marking my existence. I realized fully then that responding, speaking, moving, any action could seal my fate entirely. The barn had been waiting, the animals had been waiting, and I had walked willingly into the trap. Hours or minutes, I could not tell. The whispering, the shadows, the presence of the animals pressed on me from all sides. My mind strained to separate reality from hallucination. I understood the pattern now. The farm tests, observes, teaches, claims. The animals were extensions of the barn's will, its consciousness made manifest, enforcing rules I could not comprehend. And then, as if sensing my comprehension, the whisper ceased. The shadows remained. The animals stayed in place, unblinking. The cow stepped closer, blocking the only path to safety. My name had been called. The test was over. The decision was made. I understood with a clarity that chilled me to my core. The sound from inside the barn was not an animal. It never had been.
By the time I stepped fully into the barn, the night had thickened into something tangible, almost liquid, pressing against my skin. The air smelled of old hay, wet earth, and something metallic, like blood left to settle for decades. My flashlight flickered, briefly illuminating shapes that shifted and contorted, only to vanish into darkness. I knew the moment I crossed that threshold that there would be no turning back. The whisper had stopped, but its absence was more terrifying than its presence. The silence was alive, heavy with anticipation, as if the barn itself were holding its breath. Then I noticed the cow, standing near the center, larger and more imposing than I had ever realized. Its eyes glowed faintly red, reflecting the moonlight streaming through the gaps in the roof. It didn't move toward me, yet I felt trapped, as though an invisible force held me in place. The other animals, dogs, goats, horses, stood along the edges of the barn, completely still, yet aware. Their gaze was deliberate, precise. They were no longer observers, they were guardians, enforcers of a rule I had broken the moment I arrived. The barn itself seemed alive, its wooden walls pulsing slightly, almost like a heartbeat. I realized with cold clarity that this place was not a farm in the ordinary sense. It was a living system, conscious, intelligent, and patient beyond measure. Then I heard it again, not whispered, not soft. This time the sound emerged from the shadows themselves, low and guttural, resonating inside my chest. It was not an animal. It was not human. It was something else, something older, something waiting for the moment I failed to obey. My name echoed once, twice, then slowly stretched into a cadence that matched the beat of my own heart. I tried to run. My legs moved, but the barn stretched before me, the shadows elongating, twisting, corralling me toward the cow. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet I was powerless. I felt the intelligence behind every movement, every placement of the animals, every shadow in the barn. It was orchestrated, deliberate, and merciless. I had become part of its system. Then I heard the ledger. On a raised platform near the back of the barn lay an old book, open, yellowed pages curling at the edges. Names were written in pencil, some faded, some fresh, and there it was, my name, faint at first, then darkening, spreading across the page as if the barn itself was marking my existence. I realized fully that I had been cataloged from the moment I arrived, each step I had taken, observed, measured, judged. The cow moved slowly toward the ledger, and I understood with bone-deep certainty that it had been waiting for me to arrive here, to reach this moment. The animals flanked me, a corridor of watchers. Shapes in the shadows moved subtly, circling, almost dancing, shifting with a fluidity that was impossible. The air itself seemed alive, pressing against me from all sides, heavy with anticipation. I felt a presence enter my mind, a consciousness that was not mine, not human, not animal. It was the barn speaking without words, teaching without demonstration, judging without mercy. My thoughts were no longer my own. Every fear, every hesitation, every impulse was known, observed, measured. I realized then that answering the whisper, responding to the call of my name, was never an option. The barn decided, and I had no say. The ledger page darkened further. My name became almost black, etched not with pencil but with intent. The cow stared directly at me, her gaze piercing through my mind, through my body, through the very essence of who I was. I was frozen, yet fully aware. The barn, the animals, the land itself had claimed me. I was no longer a visitor. I was now part of the record. A soft movement from the corner caught my attention. Shapes emerged from the shadows, humanoid but distorted, moving with unnatural grace. They circled the cow, forming a slow, deliberate pattern. I realized they were the spirits of those who had come before, names already written in the ledger, trapped within the system, enforcing its will alongside the animals. The whispers returned, louder now, multiple voices overlapping, echoing my name in perfect unison. I tried to scream. My voice failed. My body froze completely. The cow stepped aside, only to reveal the shadows of the barn itself shifting, alive. The walls pulsed, the ceiling groaned, and I understood fully this was not a building. It was a consciousness, and it had chosen me. The first rays of dawn touched the horizon, filtering weakly through the gaps in the barn walls. Yet the light could not reach me. I remained surrounded, observed, marked. The animals returned to their ordinary appearances, grazing and wandering, but their presence was still felt, heavy and deliberate. The shadows receded, but I knew they were only waiting, patient as the farm had always been. The cow, the ledger, the barn, they were all one entity, and I had been absorbed into it. My name would remain in the book, darkened and permanent, a warning for the next visitor who ignored the rules. The whispers of my name would continue to echo in my mind forever, a constant reminder that some farms are never just farms. Some places exist beyond rules, beyond time, beyond mercy. I stepped back, fully understanding the truth. I had been observed, measured, judged, and finally claimed. The animals had never been free. They had been sentinels. The barn had never been empty. It had been alive. And the rules, every warning, every silent instruction, were not for the animals, but for humans like me, intruders who wandered too far, too carelessly. I will never leave Pine Ridge. My name is now part of the ledger. My thoughts, my fears, my presence, they belong to the farm. And the next time someone hears their name whispered from the barn, they will understand what I did not. Answering is not an option. Some farms are quiet. Some farms are still. Some farms never truly close. And this one, the barn, the animals, the land itself, will always wait, always watch, always claim.